Okay. Well, welcome everyone. My name is Phil Lustig. I am the Vice Chair of the Disaster Network of Assistance Rotary Action Group. I'd like to welcome everyone, Rotarians, Rotaractors, from all over the Rotary world, Rotary districts and guests. We've got people here from Scotland, from Nigeria, from New Zealand, from Texas, from Jamaica. I'm from Florida. Bob Stewart is on from Illinois. Before we get started, there's some details on how we will conduct this webinar. We'll be sharing a screen presentation, and I'd appreciate it if you could rename yourself in the participants window, giving your name, club or country or district. We're going to ask everyone to stay muted during the presentation. We will have a question and answer period at the end. The webinar will be in English, and it is being recorded. Translation in captions is available if you choose to do that. If you go down to the bottom part of your screen, you'll see show captions, and a little up caret will give you the opportunity to choose a language other than English to select captions on. And if you have questions, you might want to post them in the chat box. I'd like to welcome past Rotary International Director Bob Stewart. He's the chair of our Rotary Action Group, and he's going to give us some opening comments. I didn't see, I don't have the gallery open, so I don't know whether Barry is logged on yet, but we're expecting opening comments from Barry Rassin, past Rotary International President, and current Rotary Foundation Trustee Chair. And then Michael and I are going to do some stuff on disaster planning framework for Rotary zones and regions, districts and clubs. And then we're going to talk about disaster preparedness specifically for districts and clubs, and then we'll go to questions and answers. We hope to have about 15 minutes at the end for that last portion. So with that, I'd like to invite Bob Stewart. It wants me to confirm my language, English. Say it. Okay. We'd like to welcome Bob Stewart, who is the chair of Disaster Network of Assistance, Rotary Action Group, past director of Rotary International, a resident of Illinois and of Bay St. Louis, Mississippi. Bob, welcome. It's on you.
Thank you. On behalf of the entire board of DNA RAG, we really appreciate your being here, and we want to welcome you. I would note the recording will be made available to each of you along with the PowerPoints, that presentation, and we will also put it onto the DNA RAG website. It is a pleasure to have you with us, and this is the third session pertaining to this content, and what we are trying to do is reach out so that it is available globally. So we've set different days and we've set different times, trying to reach as many people as we can. What is DNA RAG? It's one of 25 different Rotary action groups. These are interactive networks of Rotarians, Rotaractors, spouses, and affiliated Rotarian and other groups. DNA RAG assists with disaster preparedness, communication, and recovery on a worldwide basis. Our primary focus is disaster preparedness and communication between affected areas and potential assistance for long-term recovery. Over the course of years, we've recognized certain principles that we've hope that we stand for in DNA RAG. We're there to assist districts, clubs, and individual Rotarians. We try and listen and facilitate local solutions to local situations and issues. We're here to help you. The projects are chosen by local Rotary clubs and districts. We try wherever possible to utilize local suppliers and workforce and expertise. We emphasize preparedness and training as an area of focus. We recognize the need for international coordination. We also recognize a fiduciary responsibility of transparency and accountability. We try and team wherever possible to other RAGs and Rotary International and our Rotary Foundation. When a disaster happens, we recognize that it's not just disaster network of assistance that's affected, but also WashRAG, water and sanitation, environmental sustainability, mental health initiatives, all come together as different Rotary action groups, and all are there to assist. Rotarians as a whole are not first responders, although you have an awful lot of individual Rotarians and clubs. When a disaster hits, it tears at their heartstrings, it affects their fellow Rotarians, and they are, in fact, first responders. But Rotary corporately is not a first responder. We focus on long-term recovery of communities. We're there before the disaster, during the disaster, and long after the disaster. That's what we stand for in DNA RAG, and we hope that the materials that will be presented here today will be of assistance to you and sort of scratch the surface of who we are and how we can help. We are part of the family of Rotary. Phil, is Barry online or?
No, Michael, can you tee that up?
Can you send me that link again, Phil? I'm trying to find it. Go ahead, Bob.
I would just say that I think DNA RAG has benefited by virtue of the fact that a lot of our leadership, including Barry, have suffered through the impact of disasters. Barry has taken a lead role over the years in efforts in Haiti, as well as the broad scope of the Caribbean area. And for over 20 years, he has worked in disaster recovery efforts. Hopefully, if he joins with us, or Phil, are you trying to put the
I'm trying to find out, you needed the recording mic? You're muted, Michael.
You can always come back to that. Why don't we move forward with the presentation?
All right.
And if Barry comes on, we can close out with Barry.
Okay.
So we're pleased to have you with us. As I said, this is the third session dealing with the exact same content. And we've had on prior calls roughly between 40 to 60 people. And tonight we've got over 20. So we're very pleased to have you with us. Phil, Michael?
That's all,
Sure.
Michael. Go ahead, Mike.
Okay. The following are our goals for what we want this webinar to encourage. Importantly, we're encouraging all districts and clubs, and even the wider Rotary zones or disaster zones, to have disaster preparedness objectives and goals that they are pursuing, to get active in preparing for disasters. The webinar that follows is provided by DNA RAG and is intended to stimulate discussion on this topic in order to better support Rotary's disaster relief efforts worldwide. Well,
Thank you, Michael. First, it's critical that at the highest level, the level that addresses the overall geographic threat area, and this can be a Rotary zone, a regional geographic area, or an individual district, have the highest level of disaster management oversight. This oversight committee should have responsibility for disaster management, for disaster preparedness, and for disaster response. The structure will and should be different from zone or region to zone or region. We've discovered that everything needs to be tailored to the events that are taking place and the region. There isn't a one size fits all, and it needs to be tailored to what your existent situation is. Our experience in Rotary dealing with disasters has taught us that at this high level oversight committee, there need to be two subcommittees, each with separate but important focus. The first is disaster preparedness. And the Disaster Preparedness Committee is tasked to ensure that a proactive planning and preparation to assist each district and its clubs be prepared for identified risks. And we will discuss risks in a short while. Secondly, there should be a disaster response committee that can be activated specifically to respond to each major event. The regional approach recognizes that multiple districts are faced with a common risk or threat, and that a response from each individual district would not be adequate or comprehensive enough. And that's why we believe in the regional approach. These regional disaster situations exist in many areas, such as the Caribbean, which has multiple districts and multiple countries. There are they also face common threats or disasters, such as a hurricane or a severe tornado that might in the United States cross a number of states. Or, for example, the flooding in Brazil that has hit 6 states in the southern part of that country. Another recent example is the flooding in East Africa, and our first contact with those people was in Kenya, but now we understand that it's much more widespread than just a single country or a single district. There are several considerations to be taken into account in establishing a disaster region. Boundaries, and let us be clear that we don't want the region to be confused with the much larger Rotary effort in regions such as Oceania, the Oceania pilot. But this is a much more narrow focused disaster region with common characteristics such as common geographies, such as zones 30 and 31 in the US, the Caribbean and Florida, regions in Brazil, in East Africa, or in Oceania. While the details of how these things function will need much more time to elaborate on and discuss, DNA Reg encourages all Rotarians to have these goals in place. Michael?
right. Shall we hear from Barry?
Is he on? Yes.
Okay.
Welcome, Barry. You look a little frozen. Oh, okay. Yes. That's what,
The water and the possibilities. Thank you to Bob and Phil and Mike and your whole team. You've brought the DNA rag to a new level. And I think it's really important that our Rotary Action Groups get stronger and stronger, because I think where you have such a group of our members who are focused on one thing, the possibilities are fantastic. And I appreciate all of you coming here, 23 on the call. I hope we continue to grow, but great to see so many countries involved. You all know how important it is to be prepared. I know because I've been involved in a number of disasters. Hurricanes are what hits us locally. Been through lots of them, worked with some with Bob Stewart and Phil, of course, who also helped me with the earthquake in Haiti. Two totally different types of disasters needing totally different types of preparation. We are now in my country, we're prepared. We're going to get hit by a hurricane. We just don't know how hard it's going to hit. But we know it's going to be harder than ever because the water in this part of the world is hotter than it's ever been. It's record heat in the water. When the hurricane comes, a storm comes, it's going to be stronger than we've ever had in the past. You've got to be ready for it when it comes, so you can jump in and help other people who need help. And I think of Hurricane Dorian, Mike Stafford's on the call from Freeport. His area got hit hard. Mike lost his house, but did he go to his house to fix it up afterwards? No. He went to the Rotary water plant and helped everybody in the area because he knew that was the plan. That's what has to happen. People need water. Not sure he ever got back to his own house because he was giving of himself like we all do as members. But it was the preparation. It was having that water plant there that we've had for a lot of years now. So when there's a hurricane, we know there's no water in the island. Rotary gives water to the entire country. That's preparation. That's long-term preparation. But every club needs to think about how are they going to get ready? What's the disaster that's going to hit your area? Is it fire? Is it earthquake? Is it hurricane? Is it storms? Is it volcanoes? There's more and more happening around the world, and we know that. There is climate change. It's undeniable. We know we're going to lose our reefs, so the environmental issues are a big part of this. As we have stronger hurricanes, we're going to have more issues with our reefs as well. But preparation is key. But I'd also ask you to make sure you're familiar with the newest process for handling disaster grants from the Rotary Foundation. It's changed a lot. And if you're thinking back to the days we used donor advised funds, we could start a new fund for a new disaster and we end business quickly with $10,000 and we can get going and start the marketing we all know that we've got to move quickly if we want to raise funds. Part of your preparation is how are you going to raise funds? How are you going to get out there in the Rotary world and make sure that Rotarians know this is a disaster and you need help with? Well, there is a disaster fund now at the Rotary Foundation. Pleased to know that we actually have more than $250,000 in it today. That was actually last week, so it may not be today. But I mean, the disasters keep coming. We've got to keep helping. Having the general disaster fund is good, but in all honesty, Rotarians react to a specific disaster. So we've got to be ready when your area gets hit. How are you going to turn to the Rotary world and ask for help? The disaster fund is certainly one way to go for a
Barry, you're muted.
Yeah, sorry, I don't know how that got muted.
No problem.
Where was I? So we've got to be ready for our area. How do we jump into that fray quickly? Do you have a disaster committee ready to go? In my country, our disaster committee is there all year. It's about getting ready so when the day hits, we're ready to go. But the disaster of magnitude is really only for very special disasters that affect a lot of people. But go on the website and learn what the criteria is. Because the beauty of it is that when there is a significant natural disaster, we're able to open a fund quickly. And I say quickly, it's probably 5 days at the Rotary Foundation and tell the Rotary world we could raise funds for that specific disaster. And that raises more funds than any other way because it's a specific place people want to help. And it really works. So we've done it with Morocco, we've done it with Pakistan, but we started late in Pakistan. We've got to start right away. So we didn't do a lot when 3/4 of their country was flooded, but we weren't able to really implement anything for a while because we weren't ready to go. But there are areas we move very quickly, and that's good. In Brazil, the flooding recently, we were able to monitor it from day one. By the 4th day, we knew it met the criteria. By the 6th day, we had a fund. We raised money for Brazil. But that's preparation. We're all ready to go. And one of the beauties is once the district governor locally has signed off on it, and a director and or trustee have signed off on it, they can go to the chair of the foundation. The chair signs off on it. It isn't waiting for any bureaucracy from our staff. Nothing against our staff, okay? I have a great respect for all of them. But if we do that, we can move really quickly. So please be aware of those kind of possibilities where you can get help for your area. It's all about being ready. And that's why I think it's great that you're here today to hear from Phil and Mike. Both had a lot of experience with the earthquake in Haiti. We were able to move fast because working with Bob Stewart, we were able to convert a fund that's already there so we can move, get donations. We raised $6.5 million just for the earthquake response in Haiti. And we, as Bob said, we were there for the long term. We were doing projects for years where other organizations came. We actually call them volunteerists because they're wonderful volunteers who fly into the country, look at what's there and talk about it and leave. Not Rotary. Rotary's there. We're on the ground everywhere. All your countries, we're on the ground and we're there to help. As Bob said, we're not first responders as an organization, but as individuals, I guarantee you, we are first responders. In Florida, we reacted to a disaster so quickly that we got there before the Red Cross. The Red Cross didn't want to open up shop until Rotary had moved out. You know, preparation is about talking to those other organizations in your area who also want to help in a disaster. So we each know where we sit, where do we lie in what aspect of the disaster can we help with right away and long term. Hurricane Dorian in the Bahamas, we're still working on that, and that was 2019 it hit us. I think Mike Stafford went a long way to get his island done, but Marsh Harbor in Abaco still has a long way to go. Lots to do. And Rotary, not necessarily through a disaster of magnitude or any fund, but Rotary has put $7 million into the disaster response just for Hurricane Dorian. That's just one disaster. But a lot of that was about preparation. We were able, the day after the hurricane, get Rotarians in Nassau to jump on a jet ski to go to Marsh Harbor to help rescue people who were hanging on to trees. We're only 3 feet above sea level. We had 21-foot surge. We weren't ready for that. So we got to think bigger. It's going to happen. It's going to hit us. What are we going to do to be ready? So I'm going to stop babbling and I'm going to pass it on to the experts. I know Phil and Mike will do a great job of helping you get some specifics so you know the direction you need to take to be ready for the next disaster that hopefully doesn't, but let's be ready just in case. So thank you all for being here. Thank you for taking it seriously and making sure that we are ready.
Michael, I think you're up.
Okay, the goals for our webinar today are simple, right? We just want to encourage districts and clubs and even zones and rather wider regional areas to have disaster preparedness goals, to have
would say. Mike, I don't see you.
He seems to have dropped out.
No, he's there.
I'm back. I'm back. Sorry about that. Let me.
He was running the movie in the back room. Okay, so Mike, you're on slide 10.
Okay. Let's discuss how Rotary and Rotaract clubs engage in being prepared for disasters. Experience with many calamities teaches us just how important it is to be prepared, to have a plan in place that is known to all our club members. Experience also teaches us that no plan is always perfect, and that is why we need to keep updating these plans in an ongoing manner and incorporating all the learning we get from experience of responding to disasters. A key part of this philosophy is being prepared and in recognizing that we all have each other's back. As I said, we are our brother's keeper. And together we work primarily as Rotarians to rebuild our shattered communities. The graphic here is from a graphic donated to our Rotary response efforts in the Irma Maria disasters, hurricane. This photo just emphasizes how we work together as Rotarians and together rebuild. A disaster planning approach for our club involves many things. This is our approach to helping clubs prepare plans for responding when disasters occur. We will not go into all the details regarding preparing club plans because of the time we have today, but there are standard templates and good examples that are available and provide more detailed guidance to you all. We plan to put on another webinar on just this subject at a later date. These are just some of the major steps in preparing those plans. The first step is to identify what sort of risk your club faces. After you've got a good fix on your risk, then you can start to prepare plans for responding when these risks manifest themselves. We prepare club plans. We spend effort in identifying contacts within our clubs and how we will contact each other in the event of a disaster. If you're relying on a cell phone, forget it. Cell phones won't work after disaster. We create collaboration and contact with our local emergency responders in advance. Prior to disasters, we invite them to our club meetings. We invite them to speak, to understand their issues, to understand what Rotary can do to help them as first responders better prepare. Next, we identify all the resources that our club members have amongst us. Some people may have chainsaws, some people may have backhoes, right? Various things. Some people may have a whole water treatment system for the community. We encourage also Rotarians and Rotaractors to very importantly create individual and family plans for their homes, how they and their families would respond to disasters. Whenever we have all those plans together, then we test them. We conduct simulations and test exercises in a club meeting, and let's play tonight how we'll respond in a disaster. We let you know more about this and a fuller webinar on this, but let us go over to some of these highlighting points. Every club and district needs to assess what are their risks. Each area has its own unique type of risk. In terms of risk, we are concerned with what they are, their potential chance of occurrence, and the impact that will be caused when they occur. This is critical and very specific for your club. It is not the same as other clubs or for your overall district. but specific to your community where members serve and live. Rotary needs to stay close to the work of all government bodies, particularly those involved in disaster response. International agencies such as the various UN bodies, the Red Cross, many more, in a discussion of what these risks are in each community. A personal reflection for me in preparing these slides for this webinar is in our discussions as a group of Rotarians interested in these things some time back. It is remarkable how our perception of these types of risks has increased significantly in recent years, and so have their incidence and frequency and the impacts of these risks. Some of the newer ones I've highlighted in red. Very much remember a discussion we had in 2018, 2009, that we should identify pandemics as a risk. I'm glad we decided that we would. More recently, we are seeing the effects of heavy rains, floods, and mudslides, the other extremes, heat stress that cause wildfires, and as Barry was talking about, sea level rise, which are affecting our coastal communities. And we have the usual things like industrial accidents, derailments of chemical cars, and of course, our personal risks at home where a lot of issues occur, and all other risks. So that's about a little thing on risk. A key issue on risk, and this was a statistic brought out by the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, and in 2021, they made a statement, big treatise on the subject, but a simple conclusion that climate-related disasters will increase, and the term they used there was multifold by 2030. Well, we didn't fully understand that at the time, but here we are in 2024, and we're certainly seeing the impact of that. Phil, you'd like to take this next one?
Sure. As Barry indicated, and I heard this earlier this evening in a talk by President, President-elect Mario from Brazil, Rotarians are people of action. And Rotary has a long history of helping in disasters. I hate to tell you how long mine has been. I lived in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, actually right outside of Harrisburg. My office windows overlooked the cooling towers at 3 Mile Island. And our Rotary Club in Harrisburg was involved with helping evacuate schools and stuff when the near meltdown at TMI happened. Rotary conceptualizes all the different things we do as Rotarians in taking action to helping in disasters into the following categories. Actions that take place before a disaster, and that's the focus of this webinar. Actions that take place during a disaster, and that's a future webinar. And actions that take place after a disaster, and that's also a subject for a future webinar. But this helps our understanding, planning, and execution of these actions. And it's important to understand all these ways that Rotary takes action. Before, next slide, Mike. Before we get going in a disaster, we've got to look at a lot of things. We need an organized and committed zone or district senior leadership committee that's going to direct at the district level. And then we need district disaster funds. Barry mentioned that in his district, and which is also the district Michael lives in, their disaster committees operate year-round, so that in the event of an impending disaster, and we usually know 4 or 5 days in advance if a hurricane is coming, the disaster committee can stand up and start acting before the disaster hits. We need to take a regional focus on disasters at the zone or region level, which is much broader than just a district level. And we mentioned here the Caribbean, which is 3 districts, 24 some countries. But it's when a storm crosses the Caribbean or crosses the Caribbean and comes into the southeastern US, whether it be Florida or in Bay St. Louis, Mississippi, where Bob has a home, it's multi-district, multi-zone. But we should have a disaster committee that recognizes the common risks for that geographic area. And DNA RAG works with district disaster preparedness committees. We facilitate club and individual disaster plans. We help them with those plans, and we're partnered with them. And we also partner with other non-Rotary action groups or other groups, such as Disaster Aid USA, Disaster Aid Australia, Disaster Aid Canada's Disaster Aid Brazil, Team Rubicon, which is a group of US military veterans who will, at the drop of a hat, pick up their tools and go to wherever there's a disaster. Shelter Box, SEDEMA, which is in the Caribbean, and it's similar to the United States FEMA, which is the Federal Emergency Management Authority, Aquabox, and there are a number of others. And then what we've done is created a library of disaster preparedness resources that you can find on our website, including recordings of meetings like this, recordings of webinars that we have done in the past. Michael mentioned some of the inventory sheets that a club might use to determine what's available in their club. So, Mike, up to you for jury.
Okay. So the disaster occurs, and we need to go over what are our actions as Rotarians during the disaster. A key thing is to start up this high-level disaster-specific committee meetings as soon as possible. Barry spoke about the Dorian disaster, and they started their official meetings on a daily basis 2 days before the cyclone hurricane hit. Right? It's important to convene as quickly as possible. Then they start making contact with the clubs on the ground in the affected areas, and those clubs become and chairmen become their club regional coordinators for the disaster. The disaster committee, high-level disaster committee, assists in disseminating information on the disaster to higher levels of Rotary, other levels of Rotary, and external parties. It is very important to start activating fundraising efforts very promptly. We all know the news cycles where in a week's time, their focus can shift to something else. The disaster-specific committee then works to assist in channeling funds through the local clubs to the communities in need. These resources can be financial resources, material resources, whatever that are pledged. In a disaster, there's an explosion of information. There are many good Rotarians contacting the disaster committee. What can they do? What is the situation? And we need to manage that sort of information, keep it available for the full disaster team. We need to keep track of any pledges of assistance or offers of support and how we can maintain contact. Very importantly, in responding to disaster, the clubs will do projects, and we need to keep a whole gamut of information about those projects. And we do that in DNA RAG with a specially created app, we call it, or shared database where all our members and the clubs in general can share information, what's being done by Rotary on these disasters.
Michael, could you go backward to before for 1 second before we get to this?
Sure.
Because there's something I skipped over very unintentionally. But the second bullet point here is disaster funds. And I just like to mention that, and I know this to be a fact, in Michael's district, part of their district dues goes to a disaster fund each year. So that in the event, not in the event, when the event happens, They don't have to start scrambling around to raise funds. They have a fund in place. So now, Michael, if you'd go ahead to slide 16, we'll talk about after, okay? Thank you. After a disaster, we need to continue responding with actions that are as needed. And it's going to be different for every event. There's a lot of similarity in the things that we're required to do, but you will never find the same thing twice. And we have to help the clubs determining where the resources are that they can access. In many cases, and we'll come back to Dorian again. When Dorian struck in Abaco, there was nothing on the ground. Everything had to be imported, which is kind of antithetical to our desire to source material locally. But if there's no stores left, if there's nothing left, I mean, that island was wiped clean to the ground. So we had to import a number, we and the people on the ground had to import things. We need to continue to help encourage people to be accountable for their community-specific needs. And I know when you're, as Rotarians, working on global grants, you need to work on needs assessment. Well, that same thing is true when you're dealing with disasters and figuring out what's needed. The one thing that DNA Reg does not do is propose projects. Projects have to come from the local clubs up through their disaster management committee, and that's the only way it works properly. And then when that happens, we're able to channel funds to help the clubs. We have the facility with a 501c3, which is a tax-exempt foundation that allows us to help collect funds, and so the donor can get a tax break. And we hold those funds for district committees or disaster committees, and we release those funds at their instruction after they have approved projects in their community. One of the things, and Michael has here, or we have learning points. One of the things that is really imperative is having what I like to call an after-action review. After whatever the event is, going back and looking to see what we did well and what we could do better the next time. And then lastly, and this is something that's really key and has come more and more to light recently, is helping our rescue workers, helping the people who are involved at the ground level with their psychological help, because believe me, they will have been impacted by whatever they've been exposed to. Michael?
Good. Let's talk about a little bit more about those actions that Rotarians take. And these are really in disaster recovery projects, and how a district can facilitate and support clubs doing these activities. And we're going to go from the left to the right of this diagram. And very importantly, as Phil has said, the project ideas and the plans that come from those ideas start with the Rotary Club. Each club assesses their communities and identify the specific needs there. Then they seek district support for executing those projects. The clubs submit funding requests submitted into our app, or as we say, into our common hymn book, where everyone sees that information. And then the district reviews and assists and supports those clubs in completing these applications, reviewing the projects very scrupulously, and then when they're ready, the district committee approves the projects. Project funding is then provided to the club, and then we start and continue our detailed record keeping of what's happening. So as we're moving from left to right, the district is there monitoring activities, coordinating and supporting those projects. The clubs then implement those projects. They execute all those good plans they have compiled. And then they compile the information on what they're doing and making sure that they do the stewardship reporting to be transparent and accountable with all the resources that have been provided. At the end, there's the project closeout, and we need to assure ourselves that we have a good post-project evaluation. We complete our final stewardship reports, which involves stories, pictures, proof of payments, the independent separate eyes on what has happened with this project, so that we can assure ourselves that we have achieved our goals of meeting whatever community need has been identified, that our projects are sustainable and on time and within the parameters of the resources provided. And we can demonstrate to anyone our transparency and good stewardship of executing these projects. So these are the ways that our district would try to support and work towards to support projects emanating after a disaster. Phil, I'm going to turn over the next one to you.
Sorry, Michael, I'm having a little technical issue here. Okay, there we are. Thank you. At the end, clubs are greatly helped by making learning resources available to everybody and easily accessible. And they need to be available in as many different media types as you possibly can find through channels, whether it's on your website, your club website, your district website. But one thing we need to make sure we do is make sure that we're taking care of the privacy issues as it relates to member information. A set of resources like these could best be constructed within your district's website or other, maybe at the zone level. We'd particularly like for those to include templates for plans, a recommended best practice common approach for club plans, and examples would be good club plans, but make sure that you keep anonymous information that would reveal any contact or personal information on club officers or partners. We had an instance, and we've mentioned Dorian a few times, and one of the things that took place with Dorian, typically we in Rotary don't build houses, but we discovered that we had rebuilt the schools, but there was no housing for teachers. So we were going to rebuild houses for teachers. And that required us to collect a lot of information, including their bank accounts and their driver's licenses. And all of that information ended up in what Mike has referred to as our app. And then we subsequently did a webinar and we shared the app. And oops, we were sharing information that we probably shouldn't have. And but so you need to make sure that when you're consolidating this information, that you clean it so that you don't divulge information that would be considered private. So that's what we need as far as recording. We have a bunch of disaster videos that are available for people to look at. And I'd like to open it up now for questions and answers or comments by Bob.
I'd like to make a short comment and an experience that we've had. Rotary is in it over the long haul, the long-term recovery. And it's a family of Rotary. And I'm convinced at this point in my life, the most important thing that we do and most important experiences are all related to the relationships that we have. And it's a family of Rotary. The Nepali earthquake happened, 10, 15 years ago. And we were involved in relief efforts immediately following. Over the past 2 to 3 years, we became acquainted, and Phil did, with a a physician out of Australia who was working with an Australian women's group. DNA RAG has a 501c3 tax exempt entity to receive funds. We recently received $300,000 from one donor to apply in rebuilding a maternal care hospital and wing in Nepal, 10 to 15 years after the earthquake. But this gave that group an opportunity to complete that wing. And it was all through relationships. So we use the 501c3, which is a US tax exempt entity, to gain dollars for those who are passionate. The individual may or may not have a direct relationship, but she read a book in regard to the Nepali earthquake and became passionate about it. That's how our family of Rotary works and how DNA RAG can help you. If you haven't set up that organization, and in your country, you may have a lot of people that have moved or have family in the United States, and you're affected by a disaster, maybe we can help. And that's another function of DNA RAG. Now I'd like to receive questions and answers because that's what we're all about. So I'm not seeing any hands up. Bill,
I'm looking through the chat box. I don't see any questions. See a lot of stuff about it. No. Okay.
Dan, would you like to say something?
If you please unmute yourself if you wish to say something.
Dan, you've
Yeah.
got a hand up.
Hi, guys. Just a real simple question is, will we have access to this presentation?
Yes, earlier, let's see, what today is Thursday. Today's Thursday still. Yesterday, I sent out to all the people who had registered for webinar 1, the recording of webinar 1. Tomorrow, I will send out to all the people who had registered for webinar 2, that webinar, which includes of course, that includes the PowerPoint. And then tomorrow being Friday, Saturday, I'll probably send out to all 47 people who had registered for this event, the information, the recording.
Well, what I'm wondering is, rather than just the recording, can we get our hands on the PowerPoint so that we might give
Yes.
this presentation?
Yes,
Yeah, Michael can do that.
yes.
Well, our hope also is to post it on the DNA RAG website so that it will be available to anybody who gets on the website and looks at the resources. So it would be both a recording, one of the 3 sessions that has been recorded, plus the PowerPoint.
Great.
You will also find, Dan, you were one of those who participated. We worked with zones 30 and 31 and their disaster advisory committee. And they have developed a training manual and guidelines. And they have been willing to share it with us, and it is being posted to the DNA RAG website. So it is available, and it's just a guideline. Every area is going to have to be localized and have their current practices and their cultural elements incorporated into the training materials. But this one, over a course of a year, has been put together for the central United States, and it gives you a pretty good base to start from. You may want to tinker with it and tailor it into your needs, but overall, it gives you the basics to start from. So I recommend that you go to the website and take a look at it. And thank you, Dan, for allowing us to share it with others.
Problem.
Other questions? we're going on just about an hour, and if we have no other questions, I just want to extend my sincere appreciation on behalf of the board of DNA RAG. By your attendance here, we need your assistance. We're a group of about 300, and to be impactful in a global manner, we need people to step forward and organize or assist in organizing their own communities in regard to disaster assistance. Each one of you can be an ambassador of DNA RAG or this concept and approach your own club and ask the club president, can we present a program? And if you're uncomfortable in doing that, can you reach out to someone in the emergency management field that might be qualified to present it? Or if you need Phil or others from our group, we're more than willing to assist. That's on the club level. You don't have to stop there. You can go to your district governor and your district international service chair, the DISC, and say, I want to be involved at the district level. I want to assist in setting these plans in place. I'm convinced that if you don't do that early preparation, you can become a stumbling block in effective disaster response when it happens. And that preparation and training is essential. If you haven't made the contact with the governmental authorities, you might not even be able to participate or enter the disaster area. So those relationships are key. Eugene, you've got a hand up.
Good morning. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hear you.
Okay, I joined from Nigeria, Abia State, Nigeria. I want to appreciate the organizers of this DNA run, particularly for us here. I don't know. This is the first time I'm joining. I wouldn't know how we can set up the disaster management committee around here, and how we would be able to get the materials and possibly the trainings we would need. I don't know if there is a zonal committee around for us in Nigeria, West Africa. I think I need a little update for us around here on how to go about this. Thank you, and over.
Michael,
Yes,
do you want to?
Eugene, what district are you in?
9142.
Thank you.
Nigeria.
Yeah.
Dr. Grace is from Nigeria.
Yeah.
But we have recently had the good fortune of getting a past district governor from Nigeria to be a regional coordinator for that. Right, she's Dr. Grace Chibor, and we certainly put you in contact with her, Eugene.
Okay, thank you.
I see another hand up.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Okay, my name is Ojukwu Daniel from the Club of Aba Metropolitan, Zone 1, District 942, Nigeria. Okay, I want to request if we can have this webinar often, because I just got the information this week, and I think this is the last session of it. If we can have more of this webinar, because I like the class I've attended this morning, and it's quite interesting. We can have more of it to educate us on what to do in our communities on disaster management. So if we can have more of this webinar.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Mike.
Right. Thank you, Rotary Juku. We certainly would be in contact. I should say that the information we have, we have compiled this information with a lot of good effort and good input from Rotarians like you, who are very knowledgeable of disasters. And whatever we have, we freely share and encourage you to send us all your good ideas, suggestions, so we can improve our content.
Michael, Dr. Grace just logged on, by the way.
Good. Dr. Grace, welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, Grace, we had two questions, Rotarians in 9142 about, and we will send you their information so you can be in touch with them. They had some questions about disaster preparedness and getting more information. I saw Marcos had his hand up.
Yes. Hi. I met KK at the Rotary convention as David Langworthy, and even though I belong to the E Club of Wash, which is in District 9999, I physically am in Mexico, and we have 7 districts in Mexico, and they obviously we have different kinds of possible problems, and I think the way to go ahead would be to maybe start with the district people, the directors, and to try to determine if there is a disaster committee, and we can check also at the district, 7 districts, if they have a disaster committee, and then we can work it out to the club level. So trying to determine if they can have somebody responsible, if not to come directly to the problem where there is a problem, they can be part of the funding effort at the time if that's coming. So and obviously the government is important, and it is a big country, but I had the experience with disaster aid. There was an earthquake some years ago, and I was in a Rotary International Conference, and I met the people there. And this was the year that that Shelter Box could not do anything. They had a legal problem. I don't remember what it was. But then I called Australia from Mexico, and I'm going to make it short. We got $100,000 to rebuild a hospital and some people over there in Chiapas. So so I know it works, and obviously we need to get we have to start trying to train ourselves, starting with me and other people, and so this is what I sense of what I heard, and thank you, Bob. I think you guys done a beautiful job. I am a Wash Rack ambassador also, so I've been some years in Rotary, and I feel very pleased to have the opportunity of trying to be of help here with you guys.
We look forward to working with you, and I believe that Rotarians are people of action, but it's up to us individually to become those ambassadors and to approach the club president and the district governor and say, what are you doing? What can we do together to meet the needs? So if we can help out down there, please let us know.
Yeah, of course. What would be the if there would be a direct contact with one of you guys, who would that be?
If you want to contact me or Phil.
Okay, I'll do so. I'll do so. Yes.
let me, I'll put my email.
And Marcos, while Bob gets that email, just to recap, we think it's important that every district have the capability to do that training for their clubs. That the district governor sets up a goal for all clubs, that all clubs must have plans, right? No, and what the details of those plans are, we can facilitate. But we think that the district should have a disaster preparedness committee, and that's their focus. And a measure, yeah.
Yeah, I would suggest to have the pivot should be the zone international guide, because he has he's in the upper scale. Sometimes
Sure.
it's easier to start up there, you know, and then trying to move down. Because remember, we have a governor for 1 year, so the best issue would be if we could sign an MOU with not only the actual governor, but with the ones that are coming after. So we can build a longer effort with whatever we're doing.
I would say that the DGE is probably the most effective individual to work with, because realistically, it may take a full year to get it off the ground and truly functioning. So if you've got the DGE as well, if you keep the DG in the loop, but the DGE is the one who's really going to make it happen. Oftentimes DGs have their own set of plans, and by the time they're in office, they've got so much on their plate that they're reluctant to take on something new. Grace, Grace, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, good morning, good evening, and is it good afternoon to everybody there? My suggestion would have been to see how it is possible to get the incoming DGs to add it to the training content that's during their preparatory trainings, so that the presidents now take it down to the clubs. That is what we did with Positive Peace recently. You know, getting it into the training content of incoming officers, particularly the pets. You know, if it is part of the training content, then the presidents will now take it down to the clubs and probably find a time to now organize a training at their various club levels, and then invite people who are knowledgeable to talk to them either virtually or physically. That's my opinion.
I totally agree, Grace, and Dan is on the line, and we have worked with zones 30 and 31, and we're on our second director. In other words, it was an 18-month or 2-year program where we had the sitting director who was supportive, but she recognized that she was so involved in other issues that she really needed the assistance of the incoming director. And now we have the support of the incoming director, and it's been a full year, and we got into the training of the incoming DGs. And that's been I think that's part of the success, is we've got it now going into the majority of the districts within the zones. So in my viewpoint, you've got to go bottom up. In other words, the disasters hit the clubs, and they need to have the planning, but you've got to have the support of the senior leadership, because that filters through to the DGs and the club presidents. So it's a two elements. One's bottom up and one is top down. You can't do it without the support of the senior leadership. but you've got to be able to reach the local club where the disaster hits.
Because once they become a past district governor, you can't tell them anything anyway. So
Thank you.
Well, Dan, in the disaster response committees, right? That's where I see all my past district governors, right? They come out of the woodwork and they're so concerned because they know the clubs, they know the communities personally, and everyone comes out, everyone's on board, wanting to participate in meetings and assist. Bob, I'll ask you to do the wrapping up for us.
Once again, on behalf of the entire board and the membership of DNA RAG, we truly appreciate your spending the time to attend this webinar. And as we've said, this is the first of several that we are going to put on this year, and we hope you will continue. We hope you'll become a member of DNA RAG, and not only be a member, but if you are as passionate as I think you are, become involved. And maybe it's just approaching your own club and getting them on board, but maybe it's being that ambassador to the district. Maybe it's sitting on the committees or doing the work of DNA RAG. We need you, and your fellow Rotarians need you. It is a true family of Rotary. And Barry is an example of that. It's not in titles. It's not the words, it's the actions. And Rotarians are people of action. You are people of action. I compliment each and every one of you. I look forward to working with you. Once again, we truly appreciate and thank you for your time. Look forward to working with you.
Thank you,
Good
Bob.
night, good morning. And thank you, Phil and Mike.
And if you're not already a member, please join us, dna-rag.com. Look forward to having you join our organization.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you, Marco.
Sure,
Thank you,
Good-
Marcos.
Good morning.
You.
Good morning, Jimmy.